Thanks for joining us for this episode. And I do want to remind you to make sure that you are following us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you may listen to podcasts. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@churchadvance. And you can actually watch video versions of each episode. We'd also really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star review and share this content with other pastors and church leaders. We want to help as many of these folks as we can. And so we'd really appreciate you sharing this episode with your friends. Well, thanks again for joining us as we begin today's episode and continue to advance a reformation of fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope amongst Bible-believing pastors and churches. This is Church Advance with Bryan Sams. Well, here, let's look at the third heartbreak, and that is the one of family hurt.
Oh man, this is probably should turn into a series or a book or I've been debating about just this writing more about this idea of the never-ending rhythms of sorrow. That's pastoring has rhythms. There are great seasons of joy, great seasons of victory. We had 5 adults saved 2 Sundays ago here at church. We're baptizing this coming Sunday. I mean, there's these seasons, right? Of joy, but there's also these ever-flowing seasons of heartache. I mean, when I say family hurt, what I'm talking about is your family being hurt. Okay? I'm talking about what is very unique to a pastor. Every pastor will experience it. Your wife's going to get hurt. Your kids are going to get hurt. And it may not even have anything to do with something directly related to you, except for you're the pastor. And I mean, I honestly have more examples right here than this was a tough church, is a tough church. Not as much now, organizationally and stuff like that. I mean, you've been around here enough to know this thing kind of rolls. So administratively, organizationally, it's not so much a rough church, but the rescuing of a difficult church, replanting a church, taking a church that was about to close its doors, bringing it back to life, and then transforming the culture of a church, which is what the River City story is, brings with it a lot of difficulty, nastiness, departures, and so on and so forth. But specifically, when I say family hurt, I'm talking about your kids have friends at church and their families leave. I mean, I've sat with my older 2 kids on more than one occasion, with them in tears. Why did my friends leave? Why am I not friends with them anymore? Which is tragic. I mean, first of all, in all those cases, we have never been the one that said you can't spend time with them. We've actually encouraged it. That was their parents' decision. But almost every case, they cut it, and they cut it at the kids. And I've said things to them before in some of the more difficult situations, like, why did you do that? I just did this the other day to a guy. I said, why did you do that? Why did you cut off the kids? That was a huge mistake, man. Like it hurt me that you left the church, but it hurt my kids more than anything. And I'll never get past that. And I mean, I think the older they get, the harder it is. When kids are little, they don't know the difference between, John might as well be Joe and Joe may as well be Jeff. They don't know. I mean, they can make a friend at a playground in 5 seconds. But when you're in middle school and high school and you've had a close friend with somebody, they go to your school, they go to your church, they're intricately involved in your life, and then bang, they're just gone. Kids don't. That's not normal. And it's very hard on kids. And I have seen it repeated multiple times in the 8 years I've been here. And I think, although my kids overall are doing well, I know that it's had an adverse effect on my kids. More attitude toward church, and my oldest in particular. I mean, I think she's seen a lot of that. And it's unfortunate when you're in a metropolitan area and you're in a thriving, dynamic culture, and There's a lot of growth and a lot of movement. You just can't get away from. Then your wife. I mean, you got your wife. Same. It's kind of the same picture, just on an adult level. Your wife gets close to people. She serves with people. She becomes friends with people, and then bang. I mean, you just women in those nurturing kind of relationships only get so much of that. They only have so much latitude. There's only so much. There's only so much ground you can give.
Yeah.
There's only so much slack in that rope before you start wondering, who can I trust? Who can I become friends with?
Yeah.
Who can I have coffee with regularly? And who do we want over to our house? How close do we want our kids to get to this family?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, as a pastor, I'll give you a couple of helps here. Number one, encourage your kids to have relationships outside of your church, whether it's sports, Christian school, homeschool co-op, some kind of a class or something they take, like karate or maybe a cooking class, sewing class, musical instruments. Get them out of the box. They need that anyways, because not everybody in the world goes to your church.
Yeah.
It can be evangelistic, as far as family to family and kid to kid. Neighborhood kids. My son has a buddy down the street. They go to a Pentecostal church, and that's kind of his bud, who he's always kind of hanging out with.
Yeah.
He's in a running team, so he's got friends from school and other places. I really encouraged my daughter when she was at this Christian school, build friendships there with people who don't go to your church. She went on her birthday trip last fall, and the girl that I let her take with her was not from our church. I'll just be honest with you. On nights that aren't our church night, my daughter will go to another youth group.
Yeah.
And I know that's a little unorthodox for pastors, because pastors can be so territorial.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for me, it works.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's healthy, because she and others like her have experienced some of that, and they need to know that Christianity, faith, is much broader than just their church.
Yeah.
They need friendships, and they don't need their friendships ending all the time.
Yeah. Wow.
And man, dude, that's a brutal one right there.
Yeah.
And I don't know any pastor's not had that happen. I mean, all the pastors I talk to, they all have the family that they were all tight.
Yeah.
And bang, they're gone, and it's hurtful, and they cut things off, and the family suffers enormously. On another level, and this has not been my experience so much, and I thank God for it, but I have not done a great job, but I think I've done a fair job of not letting the ministry overtake my family role. Like, I would say in my life, I think it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
My family is more important than my church. And my church knows it. My family knows it. I mean, one rule of thumb I never, ever do, except for this conference week, so I take that back.
Sure.
Except for something like this.
Yeah.
I am never gone more than 2 nights a week. So out of 7 days, every week I'm gonna be home. That means when school is out at 3:30, I'm home.
Wow.
And I only am gone one night, mostly that's for Bible study, and then if there's a hospital visit, or if there's something else that grabs my attention, I will do 2, but that's my limit.
Yeah.
So 5, 6 nights a week, I'm home with my family. And we spend individual time with our kids. I'm getting ready to do some episodes on kids and stuff like that. But the bottom line is, but I also know families can hurt because the pastor or ministry leader doesn't steward it right.
Yeah.
And that's a huge mistake. I remember a guy tell me one time, he said, my dad there were times he remembered my dad would load up the station wagon, if y'all remember what those were.
Yeah.
The SUV or whatever, and then somebody call needing the pastor, and they'd unpack the bags.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, no. No, you've got to do leadership better than that.
Yep.
You've got to train people. My deacons do almost every hospital visit. I've got a whole team of guys, senior adult people. They do almost 100% of them. And look, man, just because something's going on doesn't mean I have to dislodge there are emergencies, man, and I've been there. And I'll tell you what, my wife would tell you, between me and her, she knows it's so clear when there's an emergency that we both look at each other and just kind of like, hey,
Oh yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, you got to go.
Mhm.
You got to go right now.
Yeah.
That one that happened just recently. One of the senior adults in our church, her daughter died,
Mm.
and she was in a nursing home, and they were just breaking the news to her. She didn't know at this point. I needed to be there, you know.
Mhm.
So it was actually New Year's Day. So it was college football and family time and
Yep.
all this. My wife looked at me, I looked at her, and it was like, yeah,
Yeah.
you need to go.
Yeah.
Well, that happens
Yeah.
occasionally. But if you're making this a 4 or 5 nights a week, you're out serving the church, and your kids might see you every once in a while, and then the one time you think you might be able to go to his or her basketball game, you can't because the phone rings again.
Yeah.
Bang, you're going to create family hurt. So family hurt's going to come. You can't create it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it sounds to me like the point here is because in a pastoral situation as a senior pastor in particular, or I guess an even assistant pastor, whatever, your children, your wife are in such a particularly vulnerable spot in terms of relationships.
Yeah.
That means that your family unit has to really step up their game, if you will, in terms of, hey, you may not have consistent friends, but if nothing else, you're going to have consistent family.
Absolutely. We're going back to homeschool because of
Oh,
this very thing you're talking
yeah.
about. This year, all of our kids will be in homeschool, and because we can't control all this stuff you're talking about,
Yeah.
but I can control this. We're going to do family stuff.
Yeah.
You will have a dad. You will have a mom. You will always have your brothers and sisters,
Mhm.
cousins, and closer relatives like that. You may not always have a friend, dude. How many friends? Now you might be different because of the context you grew up in. I do not regularly speak to one person that I went to high school or college with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Friends come into your life for a reason, for a season, for a lifetime. And you just, man, there's no guarantees there.
Yeah.
Not one.
Yeah.
I haven't spoken to the best man at my wedding in 20 years.
Wow.
That's okay, man. Like, he was there for a season. He was there for a reason. I have a handful of friends that I can literally count on one hand if I had 2 fingers chopped off.
Yeah.
People that I am very, very close to, that I talk to regularly, and in a moment of a challenge, these are the kind of people, like when I went through a church split and trouble in 2019, Brent Armstrong's like my closest friend.
Yeah.
I mean, he called me and insisted, get on that airplane, and I want you to come here.
Wow.
You and your wife.
Wow.
Paid for me, brought me there, picked me up at the airport, took me to breakfast, and dropped me off for a week.
Wow.
Never saw him again.
Wow.
And then that relationship just goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
But that's a 20+ year friendship. That's not a high school fling friendship.
Yeah.
You said it, you nailed it, man. That's exactly right. That's how you can do your best to keep things tight with your family, even though there's going to be some church hurt along the way.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. We took a real deep dive there, but I think that, again, that's another one that could be its own series of episodes. And we'll probably touch back on that as we talk about, like you said, the upcoming episode that will drop here at some point about family and kids, raising kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a lot of stuff there. Well, let's look at the fourth heartbreak, and that's the one of Diotrephes.
Now, I'm just going to blow past this, but look, Diotrephes is like the worst dude in the Bible.
Yeah.
3rd John, he is a big giant turd.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to call it like that. I mean, really, this guy is a train wreck.
Yeah.
He loved the preeminence. There's only 2 times in the Bible the word preeminence is used. Once about Jesus and once about Diotrephes.
Wow.
And let me just make it very plain. One shouldn't have had it, and one should have had it.
Exactly. Yeah.
He was the limelight seeker. He was the spotlight guy. He wanted everybody to know him. And not only did he want the spotlight, he wanted other people to not have it either.
Yeah.
This jealousy and insecurity that comes into every church in the world will at some point or the other have a Diotrephes.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to come in. They're going to want a position. They're going to want to be known. And they're going to be threatened by you because you're a leader. I remember a guy, and there's all kinds of red flags. I had a guy ask me one time who was an intern years ago. He was working with the youth, but he was an intern. He said, "Why haven't you given me the title youth pastor?"
Wow.
Bang. I knew it right away. As soon as he said it, it was over.
Yeah.
I had a guy that I was talking to about helping our children's ministry. This was actually not too long ago. And he said this to me. He said, "So are you saying I'm going to be the face of the children's ministry?" That was a quote. And as soon as he asked it in my mind, I said, "Oh, absolutely not."
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to be the face of something, if you want to be the brochure dude, if you want to be the platform singer, all this, that's what you want.
Yeah.
Jeremiah says, seek not great things for yourself.
Mm.
Proverbs says, it is better for you to be in the back of the room and somebody recognizes that you don't deserve to be back there and calls you up, than go sit in the front row and somebody says, oh, that seat's not for you,
Yeah.
and sends you to the back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was recently with a pastor who, well, Mark Thrift, he's a friend of mine, went to the old Lynchburg Bible College, which is now Liberty. He was on the first baseball team.
Yeah.
Friend of mine, great preacher. Anyways, he told me that when he was a student there, him and a couple buddies helped start a college. I mean, a church. And at that time, B.R. Lakin, I'm sorry, Dr. B.R. Lakin, heavily involved in Liberty, great evangelist, well known back in those days. He said he was there one night at one of those opening services of that church, and in the back of the room was Dr. B.R. Lakin supporting these young preachers. Didn't come up to the front.
Yeah.
Didn't try to lead in prayer. Didn't try to be just setting in the back, showing his support. I thought, good night. If that happened today, I can tell you, I can name probably 30 preachers who would want to have a speaking engagement at that event, who would want to have their name on a brochure somewhere, who'd be requesting speaking fees and, first class seats in an airplane kind of junk. That's Diotrephes. Diotrephes sought the spotlight.
Yeah.
If God gives you a spotlight, fine, that's his business.
Yeah.
But if you're seeking one, you're going to hurt people on the way. And I know every pastor is going to have a guy like that.
Yep.
They want a title. My first meeting at this church, I preached on Sunday, my very first appointment on a Wednesday night. A guy walks into to my office at the old building. He walks in, and I am not joking, Luke. He's got a 3-inch binder, big 3-ring binder, 3 inches. And in it, he hands it to me and says, hey, I just wanted to give you the plans for the Veterans Day service, the security team. He starts laying all this stuff out. And I said, oh, hey, I really appreciate that. I'll be looking over these things, taking them into consideration. And he looks at me and says, are you saying that you are now in charge of the Veterans Day service? And I said, well, yes, sir. And the other 51 Sundays.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like right from the get-go.
Yeah.
This is what I do. This is my thing.
Gotta assert that dominance.
And he was gone, and within months, months of me being there. Yeah. It is the classic center stage guy. It's the exact opposite of Barnabas.
Yeah.
Barnabas. You see, Barnabas, Saul. Then Paul's name becomes Paul, Saul to Paul. And then it's Paul, Barnabas, and by Acts 15, Barnabas' name evaporates from Scripture. He was a curtain closer. He was a curtain puller. And I have more than enough stories about people who come in and they want a position, they want a title, and when you don't give them what they want, they're going to cause you trouble.
Yeah. So something on this, and then we'll move on, that I've observed is that a lot of times, and you kind of alluded to this, that Diotrephes person unfortunately comes in the format of somebody who actually is kind of a go-getter and willing to serve.
Absolutely.
And I have seen in churches, because you feel the need to have that volunteer or someone to lead that ministry.
Yes.
That the leadership just kind of is like, well, okay, and it never ends well.
Well, I can tell you this: one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was hire slow, fire quick.
Yeah.
And by the way, Diotrephes, y'all listen to me. Diotrephes is often a young, aspiring minister who tries to hijack a church and a staff and a pastor. And all I got to say is this: if you don't want to be a pastor, let the pastor be the pastor. And if you want to be a pastor, then go be a pastor.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever you do, don't try to go hijack some guy. Don't try to be Absalom rallying David's troops. It's a real thing. We don't talk about this enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, you young guys, listen to me. You guys be better served to go get a towel and wipe some dirty feet than trying to get a paycheck.
Yeah.
That should be your number one goal. And I know the joke at Bible college was this: we need to learn more than running a bus route and putting gas in a bus. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
But you better be willing to do it. Let me tell you, let me just give you a live example. You've been seeing it all day today as we've been walking around this campus. Levi.
Yeah. Yep.
What's Levi been doing all day today? What have you seen Levi doing all day?
I've seen Levi fixing light bulbs, moving chairs, serving.
Absolutely. And he is as vital to this church as anybody I know. He's the number one preacher when I'm gone.
Yeah.
He is administratively leading with his own authority, meaning I give him authority, but he is a servant, and that is why he is excelling.
Wow.
He's not looking for a spotlight, but because he's not looking for it, he's shining on his own.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a great example. Levi Rolston, who I'm talking about, my pastoral intern. What a great testimony. You've seen it firsthand all day.
I have.
And with joy.
Mm-hmm.
Laughing, having a good time. He's got skills. He knows how to use them. And it is a great testimony of what to be. And I've seen guys that have come into this church, even as an assistant pastor, intern, or some ministry-related person in the past, and they come in here with a sense of entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
Show up late, leave early, don't volunteer for anything, don't get involved in anything. And it's entitlement. Diatrophy's garbage. And it needs to be taken out. And but you have them. You're going to have them. Somebody's going to try to steal the spotlight from you, man. They can't handle it. Diatrophies is really everywhere.
And I love your how you pointed out how that preeminence term is used twice. With Jesus in Colossians, and then over there with Diotrephes, and it really only should have been used once.
Absolutely.
And so, if there's anybody trying,
the last time I preached at West Coast Baptist College Chapel, which was now 6 years ago, I preached on Diotrephes.
Oh yeah.
Ministry in the spotlight.
Yeah. So you're clearly not a fan
of Diotrephes.
Of Diotrephes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely not. No, I don't like Diotrephes. He makes me mad.
Yeah.
He ticks me off.
Yeah.
Because I've had him in my church.
Yeah.
And it bothers you to no end. But you cannot give those people an inch.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to stand your ground. And you've got to be willing to stand them down and speak out if you have to.
Yeah. So with that in mind, let's look at that final heartbreak, which is the heartbreak of division.
Yeah, and I'll just brush on this real quick, but some of these things kind of sync together a little bit. But I'm talking about when there is an actual division in the church. 1 Corinthians chapter 1 talks about this. I've heard it has been said of you by the house of Chloe that there are divisions among you. God calls for unity. God calls for oneness. And then people get in their camps and their tribes and their little idiosyncrasies and their preferences, and they start splintering up the church over stuff. And a lot of times, I mean, like 9 times out of 10, it's those preferential things. We've all seen it, especially preferences thrive. Listen to this. This just hit me. Preferences thrive in a legalistic environment.
Yeah. That's a tweet right there. Or a post on X nowadays.
Post on X, yeah. But you want to foster a spirit of preference-driven ideology, be a legalist.
Yeah.
Because they love that stuff.
Yeah, they do.
These are political legalists. These are preferential and standard legalists. They eat up. If you have a culture of that in your church, you're going to attract like piranhas, legalists that are going to come around and they will cause division. They'll cause division over all the things of this podcast that we have stood against. They thrive on.
Yeah.
I mean, I just heard a story today. I won't tell you. I would just completely leave names out. But a staff member at a prominent independent fundamental Baptist church was asking if they could use a certain book by a certain author, somebody that we know very well. And the pastor replied, no. And here's why. Because that guy's a Calvinist, and that guy hangs out with Bryan Sams, and that guy this. And I'm thinking, this is your reason.
Yeah.
You're looking at a 25-year-old staff member, 30-year-old staff member who's looking at you like, what?
Yeah. And by the way, if you knew who he was referring to, well, he is a friend of Bryan Sams. But other than that, none of the accusations were true.
They're not even true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you prop up these are our things. Like, honestly, I'm not a Calvinist, but I got to tell you, I don't have a problem if there's a Calvinist in my church.
Yeah.
I have Calvinist preacher friends. I preach with them. I preach for them. It doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
We don't have to be twins.
Yeah.
And so, but that's the point is, though, division always comes over people, personalities, and preferences. That's all in 1 Corinthians.
Yeah.
And when a division's in a church, it's an awful place to be. And we had it here. We had it here
Yeah.
certainly in the early days,
Yeah.
predominantly. So,
Yeah.
yeah, man, you're going to have some heartbreak, guys. I hope that the Lord will give you grace to stand and stay. 8 years in one church, man, I've enjoyed the blessings of longevity. We're reaping some harvest of it today, but you're not going to get there, man, if you let these heartbreaks pull you out of the ministry. If we can ever help, be sure to reach out to me or Luke. God bless you guys, and have a great day.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode, and we really would appreciate it if you could leave us that 5-star review, and then of course share this content with your friends. We want to help as many pastors and church leaders as we can, and be sure to, of course, follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you may listen to podcasts. And go ahead and subscribe to the Church Advance YouTube channel at youtube.com/@churchadvance. This podcast is hosted by Bryan Sams. It is co-hosted and produced by myself, Luke Clayton, and the team at mustincrease.com. If you want to connect with Bryan, be sure to head over to his website at bryansams.com. Well, we really look forward to seeing you again in the next episode as we continue to advance a reformation of fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope amongst Bible-believing pastors and churches right here on Church Advance with Bryan Sams.